one's so hard to predict, so much talent on there.
Que loucura, hein?
Espectacular, un 13, una barrida hermosa y tenemos el jugador de la CRL.
If experience reigns supreme or if the young bucks are excited and ready to go.
They're literally identical in the way we're built, so I think it's super exciting. These are the two teams, from the start, I expected these two to make the finals.
Adios Tribe, Spacestation Gaming going to the finals.
Que Brunão, a Spacestation hoje é a antiga Immortals. E a antiga Immortals sempre teve bons resultados.
If you're looking for a signature moment for Samuel, this is it.
Lapocati has been playing out of his mind.
You're probably not going to reach the finals ever again, so this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for you guys.
Just like that, Wings, the king of the hill king, puts Misfits through to the final.
This squad, like you said, a bunch of kind of unsung heroes in their careers at CRL.
I've never lost to him before, and I'm not gonna do it this week. That's all I'm saying.
Just good luck, maybe.
Just good luck. You're gonna need it.
Boa sorte.
Good luck, you're gonna need it.
Just good luck, I guess.
Play your best and let's have a good match.
It's been a long road, and finally we are here. The Clash Royale League West Spring Championship, and there's a lot of history to be made here today, potentially, folks. On one side, you have Spacestation Gaming with Akrap and the God RF, potentially the next two players to join. Only Javi 14 as players to win more than one championship in the western regions of Clash Royale League. On the other side, a team that has never been here before, top to bottom, but one big rival, Razor, who was denied a North American championship by AC and RF back in 2018, hopes to lead his squad to glory today here in this spring final. Hello and welcome. I'm Rich Slayton. Joining me is my friend Andrew Guy. We are so excited to be here for this big one. Just one match today, folks. It's the most important match of the season. It all comes down to this. One goes home with the gold. The other one goes home with, well, a bit of money, but losing the bragging rights here. Andrew, I can't wait to get to the action.
Yeah, money's nice, but the gold is what it is all about. That hype video gave me chills. I am so ready to go today. I love to see all these guys. I miss seeing all these guys in person. It's so great to see them giving out the good luck, talking a little bit of trash online, and that's what it's all about. We're here at the finals. These are two squads, one squad that's been here before, and another squad that has been on their way for season after season after season, finally landing here today in the finals in 2020, and you know what? I couldn't imagine a better Misfits squad to make it. So, let's get a little business out of the way before we get into the action. Are you on YouTube? You better be, and you better be subscribed right here, right now, and make sure those notifications are turned on because we're about to take a break until September when you talk about competitive play, but there'll be a lot of great videos online, top fives, highlight moments of finals. Go subscribe and turn on those notifications. Next up, since we're taking a break from CRL, where are you going to find out where all the best tournaments are happening, where all the best online action is happening? It's Twitter, at Esports Royale EN. If you want to follow along in English, you can follow me, at Andrew Guy, and my good friend Rich over there, at Rich Slayton. He holds a lot of tournaments out there. If you want to participate, maybe get your name out in the world, that's one way to do it. Lastly, Fantasy Royale, 1,000 gems. This is it. This is the day. This is the weekend. Did you go all out boom or bust on Misfits, or did you go boom bust on Spacestation Gaming, or did you pick a little bit of both? I don't know. I went all for one squad. I think I want to ride one all the way to the end. And you know what? I need those crowns. I'm so close to the top. 1,000 gems on the line. Today's the last day. Those lineups have to be set already. You and I were talking about this a little bit before the match. I feel really good, and I think ours are basically the exact same rosters except for one player. I'm pretty sure.
I did a little mix and matching myself, Andrew, hoping to see if I can pick a matchup here and a matchup there and see what happens. But right, I'm tied for 12th with like 200 something people, so I want to at least crack that top 10, hopefully, and get a little bit something out of it. But before we get to that, we have to get to the actual match in front of us, which this is insane from top to bottom, Andrew. Two teams that nobody really put in this position coming into the season. Much maligned, in my opinion, was Misfits Gaming, very underrated, and Spacestation people knew was good, but didn't know if they could recapture the form that this team has had in the past. But here we are. both teams have battled through adversity, played exceptionally well, and now we're at our championship.
Yeah, I mean, Misfits is one of those squads that when you and I talked about at the beginning of the season, it felt like they were maybe the most understated, underappreciated squad in CRL, but they put their name out there. They did it. They did it all through the 3 sets. They did it in 2v2, 1v1, and of course, King of the Hill with Wings. And you look at this bracket, and you see a lot of other squads out there in Tribe, in Liquid, and in SK who all were supposed to be at the top. People were sleeping on Misfits a little bit, and honestly, maybe underestimating Spacestation Gaming's potential. But here we are. We're at the finals. It's a BO5, and both of these squads have made it all the way to the top. And I got to admit it, man, I'm really, really excited to see what we're going to have, because I said they've been battling through all 3 of the sets. They haven't been just been carried by a couple of guys throughout this entire season. It's been a back and forth full roster showing.
And that's true on both sides of it. We had the coming out party, competitively speaking, for Samuel Basoto in their match against Tribe Gaming, taking out Jupiter King, which people definitely probably had that in Jupiter's column instead of Samuel's column. And that's a guy who's been great on ladder for a long time and never had that signature victory here in CRL. On the other side, you have a guy like Dip, who, you know, was in CRL in the first season, in and out, and finally seems to have found a home with Razor in 2v2. So you have some of the star players doing it at the top, and then some of the players who haven't really had a chance to shine making their contributions. As you said, Andrew, each team has their full 4 roster of players contributing to these championship runs.
Yeah, and you know, one of the things we talked about in our last match with Spacestation Gaming was Lapocati specifically and how he is a momentum player. Well, he is on a great run right now. You talk about what he's done in 1v1 in the regular season and what he's put together in playoffs. I am so excited to see this match. Spacestation Gaming wearing blue today, Misfits in the red, and of course, Spacestation, a squad that has been here a bunch of times before with a different name. Misfits Gaming, a ton of experience, however, never been in those finals and never had this much on the line. So, Rich, let's talk about these boys in blue.
On the Spacestation side, of course, the 2v2 duo, the longest-standing 2v2 duo in the game. AC and RF on the outsides, and in the middle, you see Lapocati, who was Rookie of the Season back in spring of 2019, and then the new addition over from Fnatic, Samuel, who's a ladder champion 30 times in the top 10, multiple-time #1 finishes. This team is stacked top to bottom, Andrew, and they've been great in head-to-head, but you know, talking about who has to really come through on the day, each of these teams has a real star player, and I think that for Spacestation, you gotta count on the God RF. How he performs today will really dictate the success of this squad, especially because he is in both 2v2 and a 1v1 set.
Yeah, you know, the RF was one of those guys that we all kind of looked at when we were getting to know competitive CRL. He was like, wow, this guy's really, really good at 2v2, and the more that we looked into things, it turned out he was actually maybe the best graveyard player in the game. Then you flash forward to World Finals in 2018, and we saw just who Trainer Luis wanted to put in the most high-pressure situation in that seeding tournament, and it was the God RF.
Over on the other side of things, Misfits Gaming, and we've talked about this, maybe the most underrated or overlooked roster coming into this season. You have Airsurfer, Razor, Wings, and Dip, and you know, we talked about this top of the season, Andrew. Razor may be the most underrated player coming into the season. He's in the top 5 in nearly every category in career stats in Clash Royale League, and it seems like this season might be the one where the rest of the world finally catches up to just how good this guy actually is.
Yeah, and you know, and you have to give so much credit to so many guys on this roster for staying with it. Again, you talk about being underappreciated, you talk about Razor being maybe the most overlooked player in all of CRL, and that's so much of what Misfits is a squad of guys that have just stayed persistent, stayed consistent, and one of those guys is Wings. You talk about consistency, look at this guy in King of the Hill. This season, he's 7-0. In general, this season, he's 9-1. This is a guy that only comes in that 3rd set or in BO5s, but he makes his impact known to every squad in CRL East or West.
You want to talk about how good he is in King of the Hill? The overall win leader in King of the Hill. The overall top win rate in King of the Hill and more sweeps than anybody else. So Wings, a key part of Misfits, but starting things off, we have our 2v2 set, and this is a great one to be in our championship, Andrew, because on one side, an AC and RF, the two winningest players in 2v2 history with 55 total game wins. On the other side, their long-standing rival Razor, currently at 54 total game wins. So the end of this set, one of these two will have taken control of that #1 spot and be the overall game leader in career 2v2 wins.
So here we go. The CRL West Spring 2020 Finals. This is the 2v2 set. And as you said it, 3 of the best 2v2 players that have ever played the game. And honestly, Dip is right behind him at this point.
Yeah, I mean, Dip and Razor together have been a good pairing. We've talked a lot about how they go together well socially and in terms of the way they approach the game conceptually. And he's had his ups and his downs this season, but it seems like he and Razor have finally found a great rhythm together, and we'll see if they can give AC and RF a proper run for their money.
So here we go, ACRF, bottom of your screen, rocking the Royal Recruits. So maybe expecting their Fisherman ban to really pay off here. So we'll see exactly how they're deciding to implement that. But Royal Recruits back in the 2v2.
It is interesting, Andrew, with the Fisherman ban seeing Royal Recruits mixed into a 2v2 deck. You know, we saw Royal Recruits primarily get mixed in when the Fisherman meta was at its peak, so very curious to see this deck choice from the Spacestation duo.
Yeah, I know. It almost feels like it's a counterintuitive ban and then play, but I'm assuming they have something planned out, which is probably going to be a lot of bait once again. Maybe a little bit here because those Royal Recruits also were a great card to log or poison.
So far seeing 2 giant skeletons and potentially 2 barrels. Is it possible we're looking at a clone deck out of Misfits here, Andrew?
I mean, we've seen crazier things before. Clone could definitely be happening. We might see something go to the skies.
Miner goes in on the right-hand side, getting that tower down to under 2,000 HP. So at the moment, it's AC and RF of Space Station Gaming in the lead with 15 seconds before double elixir.
Yeah, you know, one thing that Oddcraft and the God RF have always done great is their miner play in 2v2. It's almost kind of underappreciated miner play just because they have so many great win conditions that they play with, but their miner work has always been very tough to keep up with in this set.
So big push on the right-hand side, poison in response, and maybe you're seeing AC and RF trying to get just a little bit of value there on the Musketeer, but maybe they were trying to predict a clone there and get super value against that giant push.
And right now, Misfits, Razor, and Dippets are having a really tough time keeping up with the bait on the left-hand side. A lot of times that skeleton barrel is popping, and they're not responding to the skeletons on the ground, which is why that tower on the left-hand side is down to 1232. A great defensive rocket plus Royal Delivery, and just like that, the push dies on the right-hand side.
And now, not counting that giant skeleton, you see a lot of elixir advantage right now on the side of Space Station Gaming. Inferno Tower down to deal with that giant skeleton. Skelly Barrel gets in front to pick up the aggro.
Yeah, you know, Oddcrap and RF recognizing, as you said, they were in a great position elixir-wise, so what can they do? The safest thing they can do when they see something crossing across the river or coming down their lane is just, you know what, let's get that Inferno Tower down and see how our opponents want to support their push.
And that entire push really clogged up by the Royal Recruits, so even not in a Fisherman game, you still see the value they can provide. Miner to pick up that giant skeleton. A little bit of danger here on the left-hand side. Space Station is low on elixir, and here comes the clone.
Yeah, good call on that clone from earlier on. Space Station, though, looking for it, waiting for it. A bit of a double drop mistake on those 2 miners to come down defensively, leave them wanting elixir-wise right now, which is why you finally see Misfits get a good strike on that left-hand side.
And you see now Misfits starting to pick up these skeleton barrels from Space Station with just the heal spirit. So getting a couple positive trades here and potentially building up for one big move as we approach triple elixir.
What a frustrating 3 elixir to deal with here for Misfits Gaming. That skeleton barrel has caused them so much damage with so little response throughout this entire 4 minutes.
Inferno Tower down, does go to the skeleton barrel. Huge clone at the bridge, trying to put a lot of pressure on here is Misfits. Their left-hand tower down to under 300 HP. Rocket comes in, GG, well played. Space Station takes game #1 of the finals.
I mean, you talk about perfectly managed clones. You talk about your opponents playing them at the best moments to get the most out of that spell, to get the most on the board, also doubling down on the barrel and the giant skeletons. But Crap and RF have been here so many times before. They were never careless with their spells. They always had a response, and even then at the very end, they could have poisoned defensively, but instead go, look, I've got this locked down. We'll play cheap, we'll get a rocket on the tower, and let's move on to game number 2.
And that one moves AC and RF to each having 56 wins in 2v2. So now, with a reverse sweep, the best Razer can do is tie them on that overall career wins list in the 2v2 set. Of course, more important than that career number is getting the win in this set and giving their team an advantage going into set number 2. Take a look at the numbers here from Stats Royale, and you can see that the real tough part, as Andrew was talking about, the combination of those miners and skeleton barrels, but then 2 perfectly played rockets, one on defense, and then once Dip and Razer saw their tower on the left-hand side get down into range, they knew that rocket was coming to finish off the game.
So if you look at that tower on the left-hand side, it's at 677, and so much of that has been attributed to just the skeleton barrels coming through. And look at this perfect defense. Spear Goblins low, Knight high, and then they drop a mini P.E.K.K.A at the very end just in case to make sure nothing breaks on through. And that's perfect management. They waited for both the clones before they decided to double down. They also waited to spend a lot of elixir instead of going spell early on. Let's get the poison down instantly to clean all that up. No. They just go Knight plus Spear Goblins, very cheap, very effective, and they dealt with all that splash damage on the river. And again, the spell power on Misfits' side just really, really lacking for how much they needed, small spell-wise.
Well, you also look at that matchup there, Andrew, and you know that clone deck does have some defensive value against bigger beatdown decks. If you're playing up against Royal Giant, Golem, things like that, there is no real ability to have that clone be valuable defensively. So you just had to hope that it gave you value on offense, and you saw over and over again, they just couldn't break through to that 3rd level and actually get on tower with those big clone pushes.
Yeah, and one of the biggest reasons why what you're talking about, why that deck is so effective by Misfits against those beatdown decks is because of the giant skeleton. But, you know, that giant skeleton management, maybe that's why we ended up seeing Royal Delivery and Royal Recruits. That bomb does nothing to those when they're holding a shield, and it was really, really easy for them to keep everything at the river locked right at the bridge, and they could support with their DPS units far behind and not have to worry about that giant skeleton bomb getting a ton of value elixir-wise.
So game number 1 of our championship in the books. It is Spacestation Gaming taking the first game of a set that you have to give a slight advantage their direction either way. Yep. Razer is one of the best, but Dip's certainly a new partner here. Let's go ahead and jump into game number 2 and see if Misfits can extend the first set and keep their hopes alive here in 2v2.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm Misfits, you know, like you said, it feels like this set is probably in favor to Spacestation Gaming, but a 1 win here is really, really important, because again, we talk about Spacestation and how they're momentum players. You do not want to start off against Spacestation 0-2 in the 2v2.
That certainly, as a whole, no one wants to be in, and they have, both of these sides have some pretty nasty head-to-head play, and it's really hard to predict what happens once we get into those 1v1s. So this 2v2 carries all that much more importance, even though it's a best-of-5 set. Fireball takes the Skeleton Dragons off, and so far, another hot start from Spacestation. How do they contend with this big lava push?
So here we go. A nice Royal Delivery, high bats, and all of it cleaned up just like that. They get a great counter push with the Skeleton Barrel Healer, and also a tank for those bats if necessary. Zap comes in, but you know, damage done once again on the top left-hand side.
First minute away, and it's Spacestation out to a pretty solid lead, 14-20 to 22-19. And a little bit ahead on Elixir as well, by maybe about a half to 1 Elixir.
Yeah, along with that, you know, Musketeer being on the board, so they're going to stay very, very aggressive. They go in again with the barrel.
Yeah, this time going to the quad bait rather than minor skeleton barrel. It has a solid advantage. This is where you want to be with bait. The question now is, can Razer and Dip play enough defense and make a tower trade and turn this into a 2-tower game?
And I love the mental game that Spacestation is playing with those barrels right now. If you're wondering at home, why are they not throwing the barrels around the tower? Tornado is banned. It's because a great snowball can activate King Tower. So you see RF and AC continuing to throw it to that safe spot, but then that time they threw it all to the front to mess with the snowball that they knew was back in cycle. So the snowball went to the spot they've been dropping it time and time again. They missed a couple goblins, a little bit more damage in by Spacestation.
double elixir time. High Musketeer to get the Goblin Cage out of play. And Skelly Barrel should get just a little bit of damage there, and it gets quite a bit. Zap may be a half step late, 416 on that left-hand tower.
And Musketeer's still on the board, supported by the Skeletons and the Bats. It made it so that those Skeleton Dragons could not connect on the Muskie, take it off the board quick enough. And look at this great poison. It's going to clean up everything on the board, assist with that balloon, and just like that, Space Station Gaming has 28 seconds to really hold on to a very easy lead.
Yeah, nice kite there to get the Mega Minion out of contention. You know, people talked in Season 1 about how certain mechanics like kiting might not be as involved in 2v2 as they are in head-to-head play. There you saw a little bit of value coming out from those Skeletons against the Mega Minions. That's going to be it. 2v2 set goes for an easy 2-0 sweep to Space Station Gaming, and they take an early advantage here in our Western Final.
Yeah, a frustrating outing there in the 2v2 for Razor and Dip. Dip will most likely now take a seat for the rest of the day, so a little bit of a lackluster finals for him. You know, nice try there in the 2v2. Razor, you have to imagine, if they make it to King of the Hill and in the set in the 1v1, he'll definitely come out once again. So RF and AC do it with bait 2 times in a row. A little bit different both times, but Razor and Dip just never having a bunch of small spells, and it was very, very easy, it felt like, for Space Station in that first set.
And they never went Graveyard. That's one thing that they're known for in 2v2, obviously. RF is a great Graveyard player, but this duo plays a lot of Graveyard. You gotta wonder if Razor and Dip maybe got caught off guard a little bit here, seeing Graveyard in neither of these 2 games.
Yeah, you think about all the splash damage they had there with the Baby Dragons, the Skeleton Dragons, the Barbarians are great cleanup, the Poison. There were so many things that they had to maybe look for that Graveyard. Obviously, those Barbarians are not as effective against a Mega Knight, and you look at this deck that they're playing against, and there's just really not a lot of great responses to get the high DPS off the board and to really, really support these Lava Loon pushes. They were focused on the same lane over and over because their opponents' decks were so cheap and they could continue to go after their weaker tower.
Yeah, you gotta wonder if maybe they should have decided earlier on in the match to just sack the tower, stop playing defense, and go full-on tower trade, rather than play defense somewhat short-handed. They did not have the tools and those 16 cards to stop 2 Skeleton Barrels and 2 Goblin Barrels. They simply didn't have the spells or the kinds of troops that are most effective to deal with that. So maybe a bit of a miscalculation there in terms of deck choice, and maybe pulling the trigger on the tower trade attempt a little bit too late in the match.
You know, there was a handful of moments throughout that 2v2 set where it felt like SSG was almost toying with Misfits in the sense of, look, I'm going to play this card. The most likely response is for you to do this thing. And almost every single time they set that up, they were able to knock Misfits down. And like one example to take just from recency bias is that Musketeer at the river. You play a Musketeer up that high, it's clear your opponent's going to respond with a unit on top because it's so high DPS. So all they did was play Skeletons and Bats, and just like that, their opponents were low on Elixir, Musketeer was still on the board, and they still did not support their tower the way that they needed to. So really, really well played there by Space Station.
And we're talking about the those players that we had up on the front end of our broadcast, Andrew, those key players who have to show up for their squads to perform. RF comes out in set number 1 and does what he needed to do for his squad. Got the 2v2 set, so now he can sit back for a bit, see what his teammates do in the 1v1s, and maybe comes back out again in one of these 1v1 sets later on. But key player number 1 got his job done, and we'll see what happens when Wings comes onto the stage here in a few minutes.
Yeah, you know, and I'm assuming we'll see Wings in this set, and, you know, he likes to start things off. Conversely, probably Samuel. It seems like he's been the guy that Trainer Luis has enjoyed throwing in that first set. And he had a really, really great showing in his last couple matches, right? I mean, he had that incredible King of the Hill sweep over Tribe, but then, of course, showing up against TNT in that 1v1 set and taking a game off of him. So here we go. It is going to be Samuel and Wings, and this is huge, man. I mean, this could go either way.
This is a big one. Let's go ahead and jump into game number 1. Wings for Misfits at the top of your screen, Samuel at the bottom. And talked about this beforehand, Samuel has never really had that big run in CRL that we suspected coming from him after being such a great ladder player. And then, of course, finally in this playoffs is when he really showed up for his squad. And that big win over Jupiter King put them through, or helped put them over into a position to get to these finals. So let's see what these two guys have in store for us in set number 2.
Yeah, you know, he started off his playoff career with having that great set against Igor against Team Liquid, which I think a lot of people had Igor winning that one. A betting man, I probably would have put Igor there as well. But Samuel came out and did a great job, and it put Liquid in a huge hole. So it was easy for Spacestation to take that in 4, and then exactly what you're talking about. He loses that set in the 1v1 to TNT, but then comes right back around in 1, 2, 3, Azili's, TNT, and Jupiter King to get Spacestation where they are now.
First minute away, and it is so far Samuel with the bigger chunk of damage as we've started things off. And you see a lot of fishermen here, Andrew.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, Wings is a guy that we talk a lot about with in King of the Hill, but you talk about his 1v1 career, and it's shockingly contrasting when you look at the numbers. I mean, 1v1, we're talking about a 33% win rate. King of the Hill, we're talking about basically 70% win rate. So just a slight disconnect there for the King of the Hill star of Misfits.
You see a very aggressive Royal Giant to take advantage of that Fisherman being cycled in the back. Doesn't get a ton of damage, though, and just like that, Samuel back in the lead by a fairly significant margin, 16-26 to 20-26.
Yeah, you know, that log, it had the Fisherman stay locked on that Baby Dragon, or excuse me, the Baby Dragon locked on the Fisherman. The Bats were able to help out and just get a little bit more damage in, and those units stayed on the board a little bit longer than Wings would have liked.
Giant cycles in the back for Samuel just as we hit double elixir time. And it's interesting, you see the Heal Spirit in here as well, which so versatile, fits into so many different decks, and this new version of Giant Miner gives a little bit of value with the Fisherman and that Night Witch right behind.
Yeah, the Heal Spirit there, kind of a little wrench in what you'd assume, but you look at the rest of the cards, and the Night Witch, the E-Wiz, and of course the Miner, and you have to assume it's probably going to be Giant. So yeah, like you said, Giant Miner here for Samuel going up against Royal Giant Lightning from Wings, and, you know, keeping that Lightning value at bay is going to be something really challenging for Samuel here as we get into double and triple.
Yeah, you saw some pretty good value there in that last bridge battle. Here we go, final 15 seconds, and does not get the Night Witch out.
No.
But that Baby Dragon will be more than enough to clean up those bats.
And Samuel starting another push here. Got a lot more elixir on the board than Wings, and knowing that that Lightning is out of cycle, he's going to go aggro right here. Miner to the back, going to get picked up by that Fisherman.
Yeah, sharp Fisherman placement there, knowing the Miner was probably coming in with the Giant tanking. Although, what can he do here to stop this big chunk of damage, Andrew?
Nothing. Fisherman getting tanked for by the Giant. Fireball comes in to clean everything out. There is a log, and now just one more Fireball away. Space Station Gaming came to play today.
And there you have it. Samuel taking game number 1 with style. Goes Miner to the number 3 spot, high and inside. And there you have it. Game number 1 goes to Space Station. Advantage so far 3-0 for the guys from Space Station.
You know, and I really got to tip my hat here to Samuel, a guy that really felt like he was just a bench warmer the entire season, knowing how much potential he had, and also knowing that everyone else knew how much potential he had. He finally gets his moment in playoffs over these last 3 matches, and he has been more than impressive. I mean, once again, Trina Luis probably patting himself on the back for finding these young ladder stars and turning them into pros.
And Wings just really unable to contend with the multiple different levels that this Giant Miner deck created. Tough out trying to deal with the Miner catches while still DPSing down that Giant. And you can take a look at the deck from Wings. Not a lot of really high DPS troops to get that Giant out of the way, at the same time as contending with the big build up behind him at the bridge.
And the way that Samuel was cycling with his deck was really, really impressive. You know, he'd start cycling stuff in the back once he knew the Lightning was not in play any longer, and he was able to build these big pushes to come across the river. And then also, I love the deck selection, really kind of crippling Royal Giant with that Fisherman. One of the things that you'll do with Royal Giant when you feel that you cannot just keep running into this same bridge or the same interaction over and over and over is you'll go to the other side of the map. Problem is, with the Fisherman there, it makes it so much easier for Wings to kind of manage your elixir. So what happens then is you play your Royal Giant, and then you're starting to play a card in the middle to look for the Fisherman, and you have no elixir to truly defend on the right side. So great plays from Samuel, but also really great deck selection from Space Station.
Yeah, I mean, they certainly have a fairly deep roster in terms of their analysis. So they have their team of 4, trying to Luis as well. But they pull in a lot of sources of people to help them with their deck selection and their research overall. So GG well played to Space Station here. So far through 3, absolutely perfect. And at this stage, Andrew, if Space Station can win 3 more in a row, that's it. That's your championship for the spring season.
Yeah, and you know, I'm wondering here if this analysis is as on point as it is appearing, or if it's a bit coincidental, because I honestly believe if you look back at all 3 of the games we've seen, it feels like it's been a matchup advantage in Space Station Gaming's favor. Both in the 2v2s, they never had the spells to deal with all the bait, and then here, once again, in the 1v1, that deck, even just the Fisherman and Night Witch alone, is enough DPS and focus to keep that Royal Giant at bay in the opposite lane. So I don't know if it's their analysts, I don't know if it's luck, but right now, Space Station looking perfect.
Let's go ahead and jump into game number 2. Wings needed to win 2 in a row to save this second set for his team. You know, Wings is the greatest King of the Hill player in CRL history, bar none. But there's one big caveat to that, Andrew. You have to get to King of the Hill to let that actually shine.
This is very, very true.
So Samuel may be running it back here. Fireball on the Magic Archer, going to do that a lot. We'll see if Wings is giving more bait for that Fireball than just the Magic Archer, or if he has something else in mind.
So here we go. Sam looks like he's going right back to the well.
And there you go. The Hogs do come out, so a couple different good targets for that Fireball. We'll see if he can do a good job of stretching Samuel thin with his choices.
Yeah, and you know, Cannon Card, a card that we saw a lot when it got its initial buff and then kind of fell by the wayside, and that happens a lot here in the West. People just kind of forget about how strong cards can be, and look at that. He goes for the Heal Spirit right behind to give that Cannon Card just a little bit more mobility to get on that tower. A response from Samuel with the Heal Spirit keeps it right there at the bridge.
Just a half second late with that Heal Spirit. You saw that the cannon cart went down to off its wheels just before, so we'll see if Wings can get that timing down a little bit better in the next exchange. It's so hard with that one, Andrew, because you want to get that Heal Spirit down at the right time, but if you do it too early, it's predictable, and it can get logged off, as you see from Samuel's deck.
Look at that. The Fisherman to meet the other Fisherman. What beautiful plays here by Samuel. Living in the future now completely supports that E-Wiz. Giants across the river, and that Fisherman cannot do anything other than stay stunned.
Yeah, a little more DPS here, though, out of Wings this time with that cannon cart, not to mention the E-Wiz here to stun things a little, so this one is going to have a bit more defensive capability in this matchup than the last time out.
And we'll see how exactly Wings wants to turn his counter pushes into offense, or if he ends up going opposite lane, what exactly he wants to do. So he is going to go opposite lane. You can expect the Fisherman going to come down. There it is for King Tower activation. But what is he going to do about all this DPS on the left-hand side?
And Fireball will put that cannon cart pretty low, although now the cannon cart acts to pull the Giant in a little bit. So you see that phase 2 helpful. Miner goes right to the E-Wiz, trying to clear some room. Fisherman trying to support there on defense, but an E-Wiz and 2 Night Witches. Look at that bat damage on the right-hand side.
Yeah, that Fireball was almost perfect by Wings, but it actually does not knock the Night Witch back far enough. Night Witch tanks for those bats, and now about only 100 HP separate these two. But you got to remember, Wings did a great job with that push on the left-hand side, and now Fisherman is out of cycle.
And Fisherman pulls the Giant away just a little bit. Heal Spirit gives that cannon cart some more value, but the Fisherman pulls it away from the Giant. Miner gets on tower, and there you go. Samuel behind now by just a handful of HP.
7 HP. There's the Fireball to come in. I think that's all the elixir we're going to get, so a couple hog bites, whatever you want to call them, on the left-hand side are going to come in. Now you know the Giant's going to go up front. There it is. How does Wings stop this?
And not quite protecting that Magic Archer, but with the pull, doesn't pull the Magic Archer all the way across. Now, what can Wings do to defend against this big-time push? Miner on the right-hand side on the cannon cart. Those bats should get a little bit more damage, and the E-Wiz comes in maybe a half step early.
Miner still taking for those bats, able to get it down finally. Another Giant at the river, and guess what? Sam is waiting for that Fisherman. And now, Wings, I love the idea here is you keep that Heal Spirit on the Fisherman, but the Fisherman doesn't turn and focus on the Giant. That is going to be GG, my friend.
Wow, Miner goes to the back, Fireball in, 2 HP remains. Miner gets the final swing, and that's 4-0 for Space Station to open up the championship. Now every set can secure the match for Spacestation Gaming.
And that is exactly what Samuel has done here in playoffs in an incredible display. And again, just because you're on the top of ladder does not mean you can do this in CRL, or else everyone that was top 10 on ladder would be here. This is an incredible play by Samuel. He rocks the exact same deck again. He makes some slight adjustments. He takes damage when he needs on the left-hand side, and then he overcommits on the right. Wings played great. Samuel played better.
Yeah, Samuel just a little bit ahead of him, and it was interesting. You saw him trying to make some decisions with the fireball, but it felt like no matter what was the biggest need for the fireball, that Samuel had it available in every one of those moments.
And there was such great minor play from Sam, whether it went to get on DPS units, whether it just went to go tank, whether that tankage happened after the Giant went down, like in this moment. Giant goes down, guess what's tanking now? It's that perfectly placed miner that's also on top of the cannon cart. Does he get a lot of damage out of it in that moment? No, but he makes his opponent spend so much elixir. And look at this. This happened maybe 4 or 5 times throughout this game. That one interaction. Fisherman meets Fisherman, but this time Giant goes straight on through because that Ewiz was dropped right behind. Perfect plays and management by Samuel.
Yeah, I mean, that Ewiz being dropped on the Night Witch, that's 4 elixir he had to spend to avoid losing his tower, but then meant he was so far down. You can see in that sequence there. Once that Ewiz came out, it was GG unless there was a huge mistake out of Samuel.
Yeah, and that's the one thing we have not seen out of Sam in the playoffs are mistakes. I mean, he lost 1-2 in TNT. He had a really rough matchup in that set, but he bounced back and took home the W for Space Station. That's going to happen. You're going to lose. That's why, again, being a ladder god is so important because you are so used to getting out of the tilt. You are so used to playing through those mental moments where you feel down because you don't have a choice. And that's, again, why Samuel played so well today. I'm blown away by the kid.
So now we head into our set number 3. And every single set now is one that Misfits has to win. We've seen this reverse sweep happen before here in the playoffs, but Space Station was the one that did it, coming all the way down in first 2 sets and then coming back, roaring back to an overall victory. The question now is, can Misfits handle the pressure, knowing that every single set is a must-win for this championship?
Well, you know, that's a really good question, because one of the guys we talked about a lot earlier this season was Airsurfer, and it's someone that it seems like he's struggled a little bit in live competitive play. This season, it seems like he's finally been able to shake it off, and we wonder if building that confidence throughout the regular season puts you in a better place in playoffs, which still obviously are online. Is Airsurfer going to come out? You'd imagine so, just in case Misfits was in a, they were thinking worst case scenario, they need their best head-to-head guy out now, but will he be able to perform under the pressure? I really don't know.
It's a big pressure spot, and think of the other 2 1v1 guys who we have left, in Lapocati and RF. Yeah. RF typically goes in the number 3 spot, so you talk about Lapocati, talk about momentum. With really no pressure on Lapo right now, how loose is the Belarusian, and how dangerous is he when he's feeling loose?
So let's talk a little bit about the history of these 2 squads, because you got to remember, Space Station has only lost 1 game this season, or 1 match this season, and it was against Misfits. It was a 4-0 sweep, 2-0 in 2v2, and a 2-0 in the 1v1 of Airsurfer over Lapocati. So once again, if that's what we're expecting to see, which I really believe it is, because if you think worst case scenario, you always want your best guy in that second spot in a BO5, Airsurfer came out 2-0 in this last meeting.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that Lapocati doesn't really have that in the back of his head, but more importantly, I think that might be giving Airsurfer some confidence more than it gives Lapocati any sort of nervousness.
So here we go. It's the rematch from their 4th matchup. Lapocati and Airsurfer now in a different set, but still 1v1 for everything on the line.
So no early moments. Oh, and Lapo going Mortar to open up the set.
I love it, Rich. I love it.
We've talked a lot in the past about Lapocati's penchant for going Mortar in game number 2. Well, he wants to play what he's good at. Why not do it in game 1? Throw a bit of a swerve on what he's done historically. Can't wait to see one of the greats go at it.
So here we go. Royal Hogs against Mortar. We'll see if this is the Mortar Rocket deck, or if it's also Mortar. Oh, okay, here we go. Miner in.
Miner goes to the back. Hunter gets kited a little bit to the middle there, so we'll go to work on the flying machine rather than tower damage, but the advantage taken now by Lapocati by about 100 HP in the right-hand lane.
Yeah, really, really great interactions so far. Both of these guys. Lapocati not going to have a big spell to deal with those hogs, most likely. So going to have to find a little bit more creative ways. And with how quick this deck cycles, one of the things we can imagine to see out of Lapocati is playing that mortar defensively as we're lower, but then getting a second mortar down or getting the mortar back down as soon as this one goes down to put offensive pressure up once we have that elixir flowing more quickly.
And a nice low mortar play you see there from Lapocati as well. A lot of people will play that one tile higher, maybe out of nervousness, but that placement absolutely perfect from the mortar grade. So pressure in both lanes now. A bit of an elixir advantage here for Airsurfer.
Yeah, and he goes the nice placed Knight there. Knight is going to walk towards the weaker tower, although it shouldn't really get any damage in.
Airsurfer up by 2, chooses to cycle bats in the back, and split hogs up high.
So there we go. Split hogs. There's the flying machine to look for. So that's something that Lapocati is going to have to be cognizant of in the future. So we'll see. I mean, it doesn't feel like he'll go mortar bats immediately because he's probably gives more respect to Airsurfer, and he doesn't think Airsurfer is going to go the exact same interaction. So excited to see what happens next with the Royal Hogs push.
Well, he has 2 options. Of course, this cycle doesn't help it, but does have 2 options of going with either the Musketeer high or the Flying Machine high. Of course, Flying Machine a little more push into the center, as you can see right there, and a good little chunk of damage here from Airsurfer as we move closer to sudden death.
Oh, and look at that on the left-hand side. Flying Machine gets shots in and takes for that Musketeer, both sides taking a ton of damage.
Final 15 seconds of regulation, and with that, Airsurfer in the lead, 1196 and 1238. So both towers ahead of that right-hand tower that Lapocati has chipped down to 1413.
And Misfits really needs this win here. They really, truly do. If you talk about confidence, you talk about momentum, to go to anytime you lose a game is you're out of the entire tournament is really, really rough. Airsurfer needs to pick up this W.
Cycling Dark Prince on that right-hand side. Expect to see probably that Dark Prince in this lane pretty consistently, maybe hoping to catch a Miner in the midst, but you see Miner cycled in the back here defensively from Lapo instead.
Yeah, one of those bats gets cleaned off the board by the Flying Machine, then they turn around and get a little bit of damage on there. Flying Machine going to take the mortar off the board, so a high Hunter has to come in.
And again, you see that Dark Prince continues to go to that right-hand lane. Little kite action there from the Heal Spirit, keeping the Hunter from getting chip damage on the right-hand side. Airsurfer. Both these guys right now playing very conservatively at this stage in the game.
Well, what's so excellent, and there's that offensive mortar I was talking about, what's so excellent about the way that Airsurfer's playing that Dark Knight, or Dark Prince, is because he knows that there are very few adequate responses to that Dark Prince other than using a Miner defensively or the Knight. So keeping one of those out of cycle at all times is making it really hard for Lapo to get damage on that tower.
Mortar down again, Heal Spirit to try to help out that Dark Prince on the right-hand side. Piggy's trying to make room. Miner is uncontested in the back on the right-hand side, so just like that, Lapo takes the lead with 40 seconds left.
Yeah, Hunter played really, really high on that. It felt like it might have been a slight misplay, but Lapo was able to recover, and then nothing, as you said, nothing focused on that Miner to give him a slight lead.
Royal Hogs in on the left-hand side. Mortar picks it up. 24 seconds left. Flying Machine behind, trying to make any sort of room, get some damage on tower here. Heal Spirit comes in. That could be a big one, Andrew.
Yeah, a little bit of danger there. The Knight was getting focused on by that Musketeer. Lapocati somehow survives. Now going to go maybe Miner plus Poison, but Airsurfer sells out on the right-hand side. Lapocati cannot.
685 to 761.
God.
Will these get there? Mortar does not connect, does not matter. Lapocati wins game number 1 by a hair. 76 HP to take the win.
We are at a 5-0 run by Spacestation Gaming, and Lapocati bounces back from an early strike from Airsurfer to take that ever important game. And now, if you want to talk about pressure, and I know we're broken records, man, but this is the most pressure you can imagine Airsurfer has ever been in his career.
I'm a little surprised to see that Misfits hasn't called a timeout yet here to give us an extra minute to discuss this. Maybe they just don't want to let that get Airsurfer's head and get him right back in there as quickly as possible. But if there's a time to call a timeout and really look at this one, I feel like this would be it.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is exactly where you call the timeout if you are Misfits. And the chat is going wild on YouTube right now because no one can really imagine that this is how our finals were going to go. Misfits have been so strong for so long, but as we hop into the replay right now, we're going to see just maybe getting outclassed by Spacestation today.
And you see here on the right-hand side a little opportunity, but Hunter Skeletons enough to defend that. The Musketeer means the Airsurfer wants to go to the right-hand side, and a complete full sellout. I'm wondering here, Andrew, if the Barbarians maybe in front of the Princess Tower might have been the move here. Stop the miner connection and maybe get the stop the mortar from connecting as well.
Yeah, I know. I don't really know what the correct decision was there. For a moment it seemed like Airsurfer had Lapo's number by piling everything on at the river. How could Lapo possibly keep that all at bay long enough? But that's another thing about this guy is he knows those interactions. He knows the timing so well. Not only did his mortar almost get a shot, but he kept about like 12 elixir at bay with 5. It was pretty incredible what he did. And then the other thing that I thought was shocking was that he sent the snowball to the tower instead of on defense. Again, just knowing his time management perfectly and getting that little bit of damage in is why he is so dang good.
Making sure he wanted to stay just ahead. Now here's the big question, Andrew. Does Lapocati run mortar again in game number 2? He typically doesn't run it in game 1, runs it in game 2. Today he ran it in game 1. You have the game advantage. You have match point. You have the other team has to win a pile of games to try to take the championship back from you. Do you go ahead and do it again?
Oh, man, that's such a good question. Obviously, the mortar player in me really believes and wants him to do it, but just knowing Lapocati once again, he's so good with so many different types of decks. I think he either does a complete swerve and goes beat down, maybe even to the Skies Miner Lava, because we've seen him do that before, or he goes back to what we kind of expect, which is very quick cycle, very manageable, lots of a ton of micro interactions, which Lapo is so good at. And starting with the Ice Spirit, maybe we're going that way.
Yeah, certainly feels like it. Bats as well, and you see Airsurfer opening up with his signature emote, the golden piggy.
And here we go.
And it's going to be Hog Cycle for Lapo.
Wow, all right, so Lapocati, you can imagine, is going to try to get a ton of damage in here in single elixir.
So a lot of standard pieces of Hog Cycle decks, the Musketeer, the Ice Spirit, and it's a giant skeleton the opposite direction from Airsurfer. And Andrew, why not have a mortar in there? Hog mortar from Lapocati.
Yes, dude.
But this is that giant skeleton balloon deck on the right-hand side, and pretty nasty push coming in. Does he have any way to get this past the Musketeer right now?
A perfect play there. Giant skeleton does not get close enough. I can't see because of the balloon. Yeah, giant skeleton not quite close enough. Very close. I mean, Lapocati barely got away with that one, but a lot of damage behind.
Yeah, massive balloon connection, but keep in mind, folks, as you're watching, that right-hand tower down to 398, take a look at that left-hand side, 1214. So, of course, that right-hand tower is certainly in a lot more danger, but Lapocati with a good chance of taking that left-hand side as well.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting here if we do get to a 2-tower game, which deck fares better here, because a lot of times with Miner Bait, you can struggle, Miner Mortar Bait, you can struggle a lot in double elixir. Mortar Hog is not a type that I play much. I'm just not really a Hog Rider player, so I don't know how well it fares in double elixir, personally.
And the Musketeer does not get pulled all the way across the bridge, but a little push here on the left-hand side. Valk comes in high to clean it up. Fisherman sneaks right on by.
Wow, and that Valkyrie getting away actually kites the Baby Dragon for just one extra belch, but still not the interaction there that Lapo wants, and he goes right back to an aggressive border on offense.
Nice little Ice Spirit Valk to defend that right-hand side. With 45 seconds left, the lead of Airsurfer has diminished, but he does have damage in both lanes.
Yeah, and neither of these guys have great direct tower damage. Obviously, one with the Miner and Snowball, the other one with the Hog and the Snowball. And look at that! Does it hit? Yes, it does!
The Snowball did not push the way that Airsurfer wanted, so forced to do a little extra dropping on that left-hand side with the E-Wiz and the Fisherman both. Let's see what kind of defense Lapocati can put together on the left-hand lane. And there you go, the Hog might help with some kiting in the opposite direction. Does Fisherman stop a hit? And it does, but can it get in? Hog Rider gets one huge hit.
With only 10 seconds left, this is becoming really, really difficult for Airsurfer to get damage on the tower. And you see here Lapo cycling cards towards the right, looking for that miner. There it is. Hog Rider is in, but will that miner connect in time?
Miner chipping away here on that right-hand side, 118 to 246. Lapocati trying to hold on, has a lot on the left-hand side to deal with as well. Gonna go Hog high. Can the Hog sneak on through? Snowballs each direction. Hog not gonna connect here, and Baby Dragon puts that left-hand side down. Fisherman finishes it for Airsurfer. We're going to game number 3. Misfits finally on the board.
And the timing of that Hog in the left-hand lane was so close to perfect. He waited, Lapocati waited for that Fisherman to lock on the Princess Tower so the Hog Rider could get on by. Airsurfer was waiting for it. He drops the bats down, gets a ton of DPS in, and getting by the skin of his teeth is Airsurfer, keeping Misfits alive. But right now, it's a best of 1, back to 0-0 here in this 1v1 set.
Still, you have set point both directions, but match point here for Lapocati and Spacestation Gaming. We'll see what he has in store for that last one. This Giant Skeleton Miner Loon deck from Airsurfer has been very, very popular lately, and you can see why. Just the different levels of offense it can create. So frustrating to deal with.
Yeah, and you know, one of the things I have to really commend Airsurfer for is look at the dual lane pressure he was able to create, and how many balloons he played, right? I think he played 2 balloons the whole game. Maybe it was just the first one. Very, very well done by so many of these pushes on the left-hand side, which is basically just counter pushes turning into offense that Lapocati could no longer ignore.
And you see that Snowball played more at the bridge, doesn't get the bats off. If that Snowball takes care of the bats, we might have a champion already in Spacestation Gaming.
Yeah, so here we go. Misfits Airsurfer stays alive, extends their finals by maybe just 1 game or maybe a whole entire set. But you have to remember, it'll most likely go down to the God RF versus Razor in the third and final 1v1 set. But man, I'm so shocked that he was able to squeeze that out at the end. Lapocati going a little bit off meta with the Mortar Hog, but still Mortar.
Yeah, I mean, he's a Mortar master, and you saw he played it very, very well there at the end. But again, I have to think it's those bats. If those bats go off, you saw them eat down that Hog Rider on the left-hand side. That thing hits, that's a whole different universe.
Yeah. So here we go. I mean, game number 3 of our second 1v1. Lapocati and Airsurfer, if Airsurfer ends up taking both the sets in this season of 2020.
So waiting here for just a moment. I didn't see a timeout called, so we'll see what's taking them here an extra moment. Just, you know, so much on the line here. Of course, Lapocati would love to finish things out right now, and Airsurfer, pressure still on. Let's go ahead and get ready for game number 2. Airsurfer is going to jump on in. And Andrew, I can't imagine the pressure on Airsurfer's shoulders right now.
Here we go. Game number 3. Set number 3.
And again, the good luck emote from Airsurfer, the one he plays every single time, and just gets him in the right mindset, gets him a little bit loose. Career-wise, this has been his best season overall in CRL at a 57% win rate in head-to-head play. Compared to his previous seasons, that's the best one. He got the closest with Complexity back in the spring at 50%. But this is kind of feeling like the season where Airsurfer, we see the promise of Airsurfer finally realized in CRL.
Yeah, and I see here on the YouTube chat that there's people are saying a bit of lag popped up there. Yes, we do apologize, but should be back to normal now. Airsurfer goes back to the Hogs. Lapocati changing things up, maybe going Graveyard.
Yeah, it certainly feels that direction with the Barb Hut, and of course, if there's any team that has some good graveyard coaches, Spacestation might be one of them with the God RF.
And we'll see just how Lapocati deals with this Flying Machine moving on. Flying Machine's going to be really, really tough to get to if you don't have a great spell to get right on top of that. But first, Lapo has to decide where he's going to use his spells. Is it going to be on these Flying Machines, or is it going to be on the Hog Rider, or the Royal Hogs?
Well, and I was just about to say, I thought that he might be queuing that poison up here with the Musketeer and the Flying Machine both in range, and does it perfectly. Heal Spirit will prevent any extra damage there on Airsurfer's side, and a big Royal Hogs push with Heal Spirit on the left.
Yeah, what a perfectly placed Heal Spirit. Takes a half a lick of damage there, still able to support these Hog Riders to get some good damage in on that bottom left tower.
Airsurfer cycles the Dark Prince in the back. First 2 minutes away, approaching double elixir time, and no significant damage yet. The lead, though, does go to Airsurfer by about 300 HP.
And we'll see just how Lapo wants to deal with these Dark Princes from Airsurfer. They've been giving him trouble in this entire set. Will it be the same case here in Game 3?
Going to keep setting up the barb hut on this left-hand side. We'll see if Airsurfer at some point chooses to switch lanes, but for the moment, content to play here on the left-hand side.
You see a snowball coming in instead of what maybe would have been expected to be Royal Hogs, so you like that from Airsurfer.
Graveyard in and Barbs in the back to play some defense, though solid poison value for Lapocati in front. The Heal Spirit gives extra life to that Musketeer.
Yeah, the dangerous thing here, though, is if you go poison high, look at the health of those Barbarians. So now Airsurfer in a point, you see he's cycling in the back here because he knows this push crossing the river is going to demand a huge response. So instead, Airsurfer is setting up for his next split of these Royal Hogs.
But keep this in mind, Andrew, that Lapocati knows now that there's no really great way for Airsurfer to deal with the Skeleton Dragons when they're behind a tank. There's no direct spell to take them off the board, so maybe he's got a little bit of confidence there because he now sees there's no big spell.
Yeah, and look at this battle going on at the river. Absolutely impressive from both sides, keeping the Musketeers alive as long as they possibly could. Lapocati comes out on top, but then Airsurfer attacks on the right-hand side.
Delivery Musketeer on the right-hand lane mitigates most of that damage. Dark Prince, Heal Spirit, Bats, Flying Machine, everything going left right now for Airsurfer.
Where's the Royal Delivery? Is it back in cycle? No, so Skeleton Dragons come down to help deal with that Dark Prince that will get a charging hit.
Barb's right-hand lane. Final minute of gameplay approaching. Delivery now not in cycle to deal with potential hogs, but Lapo has plenty of elixir left to put down the barb hut, and he does.
Yeah, so what is Lapo going to do about this Flying Machine? Does he have a great way to get to it? Is he just going to keep going for this poison value, and it's pure so?
And Flying Machine does go away. Dark Prince working on the Barbarian hut. Final minute, triple elixir. Pretty much tied up here on both sides. Lapocati with game, set, and match point here if he can get the win in these next 45.
Yeah, Airsurfer needs to get some damage on those towers. Lapocati obviously in a bit of an advantage here, having that poison in his hand. You look at Airsurfer, and all he's got is that snowball. Lapo with that barb hut is going to be able to keep these hogs at bay, except for right now on that right-hand side, maybe a bit of a mental slip.
Airsurfer going into the strong side tower. Really, I don't know how he's going to break through on this weak side. And keep in mind, he does not have a big spell. So Airsurfer in a bit of trouble here. Poison played at the bridge. Lapo not putting the poison on that tower.
I'm shocked he didn't get it on the tower because it feels like he would have been able to keep that at bay. He goes Graveyard on offense. Skeletons get a hit. That is a huge skeleton hit, Rich.
Snowball needs to come in for Airsurfer to try to steal this one back. Can it do it? No, it won't. Lapocati seals the championship for Spacestation Gaming.
42 HP, and we have ourselves a new CRL West champion. Spacestation Gaming takes the win in a 3-set sweep.
Yeah, they did it in style. Andrew came out, showed dominance. Got to imagine that Lapocati's unofficial fan club, the fake Lapocati gang, going crazy right now. Huge fans of this guy, and a great pickup for him to clutch things. You talk about those big moments for Lapocati, closing out a championship. That's a signature win.
And what great decision-making throughout that entire match. Keeping everything at bay, knowing when to poison on the tower, getting the best value he could, knowing when to hold it, and at the very end, you and I both kind of shocked. He plays the poison defensively at 17 seconds left. He goes Graveyard on offense, able to cycle back around, and he wins by less than 50 HP. This man is a god when it comes to game management, and that is exactly why.
Let's go ahead and take a look at those final moments. 20 seconds left to see the poison high, and you understand why. He has so much there at the bridge between the Flying Machine, the Musketeer, and the Barbarians, but behind by 50 HP, needs to get those skeleton touches, and he does. That's one big one down to 1387. I think he gets one more here. No, it's the poison that ticks in, and that one skeleton touch, that's the difference right there, Andrew. That's so huge, and there you have it. Lapocati wins by a breath.
Yeah, you know, Airsurfer played so well in that set, just not able to get damage back on that right-hand tower. he was doing exactly what he needed to do, building up as big a push as he could when he had elixir advantages and get dual lane pressure in, but Lapocati just managed it a little bit better than he had imagined, and maybe just needed a little bit more focus on either of the lanes at a certain point. But there you have it. Those are our champions. Lapocati, AC, and RF did it in the regular season. Samuel came out in playoffs and really kept them alive for a full team victory. I mean, what an incredible season for Spacestation.
And now AC and RF join a very exclusive club, Andrew, because there are now only 3 players in the West who've won a championship more than once. AC and RF winning the North American Championship with Immortals back in 2018, and of course, Javi 14 with Vivo Keyed in CRL Latin America back in 2018 as well. So very few people have 2 of those trophies on their mantles, and now we have 2 more.
Yeah, and we can add a little bit more love there even if we want, but saying that they were a part of that squad at WCG that took the World Championship. So, you know, this is a stellar roster. I think we were all a little nervous that Immortals, when we heard that they were no longer going to be in the league, will Trainer Luis and at least a good portion of these guys be staying together. We heard rumblings that they may with Spacestation. It wasn't for me for a long time till right before the season happened. I knew it was confirmed, and I was really excited about it. But we saw them kind of struggle in the fall, and here we are, once again, champions in the spring.
Well, a little memory here. I think, it seems fuzzy, but I feel like I remember after CRL World Finals 2019, I think I remember seeing Trainer Luis, and at the time CWA was Space Station Gaming, having a little bit of a conversation there.
Right.
I think it might have come up at that point. I have a small memory of that, and it's interesting to see just the distance from that point to now, where Space Station gets to lift a trophy. And a big congratulations to Space Station as an organization overall, getting into Clash Royale with some kind of some small announcements, bigger announcements, and their inaugural season in the league, bringing home a championship.
Yeah, and the teams that they took down along the way, the former West champions, obviously, then of course the world champions in Team Liquid. This is a squad that went 7-1 on the season. They played so well. They took down the unbeatable Tribe, and you know, we're actually going to take a look at our bracket here in just a second to watch the incredible journey that Space Station Gaming took. This was not easy for them. They played the most matches out of anyone here in CRL West Spring.
Yeah, they had a rough road, and of course, that match against Team Liquid really felt like they could be in trouble. And then Tribe Gaming, you're up against such an insanely stacked roster, and you had Basoto coming out, or Samuel coming out, and putting on a marquee performance. And then today, all 4 players of Space Station Gaming doing it as a team. AC and RF getting the win in 2v2. Samuel getting the win in 1v1. And then Lapocati closing things out in set number 3. A clean 6-1 sweep. A nice sweep here for Space Station to secure that championship.
Yeah, and you look at who they took down along the way, as you said, so incredibly impressive. I feel so good about who I picked for Fantasy Royale today. I'll admit it. I got ACRF and Lapocati on there, so, just a few crowns coming my way. Maybe Samuel was in there as well. I don't know. I don't want to tip my hat too much, but what an incredible season, man. I mean, I know you and I were, honestly, at the beginning of the year, we were wondering if this may happen, if it may not, because of what's going on in the world. And to have this incredible of a season and this short of a time has been just so amazing. I'm sure you feel pretty similarly.
Yeah, I mean, it's also been such an interesting season with the shortened version of the group stage, the high pressure top to bottom, and of course, that's not it for Clash Royale League in 2020. We'll be back in September with our fall season, and so make sure you subscribe here on Clash Royale's YouTube page. Hit the bell for notifications so that when we are back in the fall, you don't miss a moment of it whatsoever. And yeah, of course, Andrew, I'll take the rest of your job here as well. Follow us on Twitter, Esports Royale EN, and of course, if English isn't your language, there are a number of different Esports Royale accounts for Twitter for CRL. And of course, my buddy at Andrew Guy, I'm at Rich Slayton. Hit us up on Twitter. We're excited. We'll still be involved in Clash Royale Esports in the off-season as well. And we're both excited, of course, for that big no-tilt World Championship coming up in between now and CRL in the fall.
Oh, yeah.
And of course, hopefully your fantasy did better than mine today. I mixed and matched, and Andrew, looks like you going hard in the paint on one side might have paid off a little bit more.
Absolutely. I don't really know what to say now. You know, you took my job. I'm scared. I don't know what to do with my hands. Space Station Gaming are the champions. Yeah, make sure you guys join us. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube because there is still going to be highlights from the finals, from other moments in CRL in the offseason. And as you said, Rich, there's going to be so much great online content from now till CRL West 2020 in the fall. So make sure you're following along with all that and no tilt and all that good stuff. And, you know, what an incredible season we saw. Let's go back to what you were talking about and how this was kind of a smaller season with round robin, each squad only playing each other one time. I actually really enjoyed that. I mean, hopefully if we have a longer season in the fall, we can maybe see each squad playing each other twice. I mean, do you think that would add or take away from what we had here in the spring?
I would like that in the group stage. If we're going to have two different groups rather than one pool for the single round robin, I actually kind of prefer the two groups, but we need to get that, if we can get that double round robin and if there's time to make it happen, you know, getting more, the more games you have played, the more you're finding the best team. Obviously, Space Station is phenomenal. They're a champion, and they played brilliantly throughout the season. But the bigger pool of games you have to pull from, of course, the more information you have, the more chances you have to correct. A team like Team Liquid, who in the past we've seen them course correct throughout a season, didn't quite have that same opportunity this time around. And, of course, a lot of this was because of the situation in the world and what's going on, and us having to find a way to bring you a great CRL season in the time allotted and dealing with our situation. But overall, I think this was a brilliant season. Every single match mattered, and that was one of the things that really stood out to me, was there wasn't a single game. I think we had one match over the entire season that didn't actually have playoff contention involved.
Yeah, and you know, and speaking of playoffs, obviously when we're back in the fall, it's the same game as it always has been. Instead of just battling for the West Championship, we will be facing up against CRL East in World Finals. So the top squads from, of course, the West will go up against the top squads in the East, and hopefully you and I will be there again for the World Finals. That's where we got that 1 HP game. Today, it was, you know, a little bit more in the 40s, but still an absolute nail-biter. So, you know what, I'll let you say the rest of this. I love you guys. I thank you guys so much. It's been such a treat being here, and I guess I personally will see you in the fall. Rich, why don't you do your thing, man? I mean, you're the guy. I mean, you took my job earlier. I'm gonna let you take it now again.
Guys, it's been fantastic having you here for this season. I know Andrew and I both love commentating for Clash Royale League. And of course, let's give a big thanks to everyone behind. You guys might not see it. There's a huge team behind this production of people who've been working very hard to make this happen for an online season. So a big thanks to everyone there on the production squad as well. For them, for Andrew Guy, I'm Rich Slayton. We'll see you in the fall. And go drink some water because, again, you are 70% H2O.